Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Yeah. What he said. And this is a washed out look. Washed out face. Everything's washed out. I'm going to do bad things to you. Not really. It's weird that I appear washed out because I actually have a dark suntan. So go figure that out. And the light on this side, I changed to like an amber type of bulb. Right? I don't know. Had a few brewskis yesterday afternoon. Not for a long time. Just for a tad. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take this into go to Universal Access on the old Mac and put down the old reverse looking white on black. And I know this kind of does like a weird thing in the final analysis. The final analysis being how the audio comes out in the end. And I swear that Tony Caravan box set thing, just keeps slipping, hiding itself. Oh, by the way, this not Man Without a Face, Jackery here, which is, if you can see, if I can do it, watch the on-air light. Done this before. This thing has been powering the on-air light for like a couple hours a day for over a week. And it hasn't even gone down 1% in stored power. That's how little like LEDs use. And, lighting is important. Yeah. That morning caffeine, it's an addiction. And I was off it for 5 years. So I guess I have to hand in my caffeine coin. Teeth still bothered me. Had some cereal this morning. We're going to talk about this in a second. So before anybody decides to leave. You know what that is? We're going to talk about that. But first, take care of some weird business. The usual weird stuff. Because it's Tony Caravan Live, and
it's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
And it is. So let's open up a mail from the Mutual of Omaha. I'm right. Your family members are almost important people in your life. I don't have any family members. Pre-approved application. Individual whole life. $10,000, $7,000, $5,000, $3,000. And what do they charge you? Let's say somebody $55 a month. I can't afford it. So I'll be in the Paupers Cemetery. I mean, I just want them to burn me up to ashes anyway. My voice seems deeper. Is that because I smoked a couple of cigars and had a few beers yesterday? I don't know. 64 ounces of alcohol. Four pints. I had like 4 pints yesterday. Well, it's not much. 4 pints and a couple of little cigars. So let's do the thing.
Weekend weather.
Even though it's not the weekend, it's May 27th. It's a Thursday. It's 5:28, a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the former United States. I'm situated somewhere around the Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic states, surrounded by, I believe, the Appalachian Mountains. Temperature today is supposed to reach a high of 75 and a low of 55 overnight. And it's looking like around 10 o'clock there might be some sun. So that's good. Friday, however, is a 90% chance of rain. That's tomorrow. And the temperature goes down to 70 degrees, 52 overnight. That's fine. However, Saturday, 60% chance of rain. High in the day is only 54 degrees, low at night 46. Sunday, thunderstorms, 50% chance, high of 57 only in the daytime, and a low of 46. Well, that ain't nice. That's Memorial Day weekend. Good thing I don't have any plans. Good thing I'm just, just me and my cat. It was an 8-pack of pints, more or less. So I hobbled up to this bar where this 80-year-old guy runs. There was no one in there but him. And, he was complaining about the fact that nobody has any money and nobody has any jobs. But I saw somewhere yesterday that they were trying to say it was the lowest unemployment rate since the beginning of the so-called plague. Figures lie and liars figure. I don't know. Of course, I guess if everybody's on unemployment, nobody's filing for unemployment. So I guess that's another way of looking at it. But remember, it's that headline, perception is reality. So what the media does is just puts out a headline and then people say, oh, yeah, wow, things are looking up.
Hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. In fact, that huffing and puffing, it sounds like you're doing because you were walking is kind of like me.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we go. Before we get into let's get into the title. If you look at the card, the title card, I call it the meme, the YouTube meme card from this show. It says, actually, it's their world. And there's a hiker, a woman looking up at the Sequoia trees. And those things are very big. And it's their world. That's from like the National Park Service. Those sequoias. Amazing, aren't they? Anyway, down below, as I say, for those who are watching this on, who can't click show more, the description is, the title of the show is Earth Catastrophe, Ice World, Flora. We'll get into that. But first, human life expectancy is dropping to below 78 years among healthy adults. And by the way, as I mentioned before, that happens to coincidentally be the same age of people who have died from the thing. Meanwhile, giant sequoia trees are the third longest lived species, with the oldest known specimen to have been 3,266 years old in the Converse Basin Grove of the Giant Sequoia National Monument. They are only outlived by bristlecone pines, oldest aged 4,844 years in the Great Basin, and by Alerce trees, oldest age 3,636 trees, or 339 years in Chile. The Earth is a planet of flora breathing CO2. Humans are merely fertilizer that exhale CO2. I'm going to put a semicolon after CO2. I know people aren't going to like that. So basically, the oldest living trees, these bristle pine cones, pines, they can live to be like up to 5,000 years old. Isn't that crazy? But that the average, that the sequoias live to be about 3,000 years old. So, and they're living. I mean, this is a living thing. It breathes CO2, of course, which we exhale. Lives off of fertilizer, which basically that's all we are, and when it's all said and done. And they live from 3,000 to 5,000 years. And that's just what we know, road rally outside. And I'm sure there's exceptions to every rule, meaning there are probably some trees that have lived very long. And there may well be some other plants. It's like, from time to time you hear these things about like sharks may be immortal, which I don't necessarily, believe in that. But I mean, there are certain sea species that they have been, unable to really nail down their lifespans because of their ability, their healing and renewal abilities. That's why people study a lot of aquatic creatures for, for various cures for human disease. Likewise, down in the rainforest, where you have an awful lot of trees, despite what they say, the rainforest is still pretty darn big and breathing a lot of that CO2 in. They look at things that grow in and among and on and flower down there for cures for, what we call incurable diseases. Though I don't think there's anything incurable, technically. I'm not at 100% today. Simply not at 100%. I got a Hawaiian shirt on and my pajama top underneath it. It's not really a pajama top. It's like a tank top. Is that what they call those things? Oh. So anyway, in my bar is filled with all kinds of just stuff plopped on the wall to give it character. And I still haven't put half the stuff up. I have so much junk. And I figured I'll throw away most of it, but there are certain things that are just so unique that they should deserve to be on a wall just because they're conversation pieces. And one is this. I don't know if you can read that. You probably can't. But there's a little bit of text at the top of it. And this was something I did in college. This is called a key punch card. And what those punches mean is it spells out next stop Willoughby, which is like a Twilight Zone, was like a Twilight Zone episode. Remember that one? Speaking of life insurance and stuff. I mean, these things always just come together for no known reason. But what happened is you in order to write a program back then, you would have to put each line of code on one of these cards. And you'd have like a deck then. And then you'd feed them into this like computer, this reader. And it would like, and those lines of code would go in, and you've seen, the old computers. And just around that time, there were cathode ray tube with magnetic tape recording and different things coming in. I had a roommate in college who was a computer science major. And he was like out there. He knew his stuff. I used to just I'm just so glad I used to go into computer science's place every now and then, just mess around. I wasn't like a major in computer science. But, without mentioning that guy's name, man, I bet he's ahead of some Silicon Valley. He's probably a billionaire. Because this was before we're talking Steve Jobs days. But anyway, yeah. So you can't see it now, but my original Mac is back there. But I mean, this takes you way, way back. This is how it pretty much started. Key punch cards. I've been around. Yeah, I've been around for a long, long time. Seen many a thing come and go. That's why I say that I still believe that these apps and social media and stuff are just passing fancies. People can't comprehend that, but they've only been around for 10 years. Things have been around much longer, and they've just faded out of favor. I mean, I brought it out before. Silly putty we don't see people playing with silly putty anymore, do you? No, you don't. Excuse me. That's part of the show. Me clearing my throat, using the white handkerchief, and passing out live on air. I gotta get this thing going, man. Whew. I don't know. And we're off. So, I was thinking about this yesterday as I sat there at the bar, my alternative to a kitchen island is a bar. And I've said this before, that, whose world is this? Really? We could talk about the 8,000 people that, are loosely associated with this organized crime syndicate that meets every year in Davos and kind of rules over the 8 billion people on the planet, pulls the strings of the corporatocracy, which are now the replaced governments. But I'm scared somebody came on and off when they saw that. Was probably somebody looking for something about, trees. Yeah, see, there you go. That's it. That's how you could tell I had a few drinks yesterday and a cigar. I couldn't hold back that. I didn't even know it was going to happen. It just happened. That scared somebody away too. Coughed into their television set or their computer or their headphones. Sorry about that, people. Life is life. I am what I am,
Here's what's happening.
So my thoughts today was I just wanted to just address this idea that the natural state of the planet is to be frozen over. And in previous episodes, I've shown pictures of the Earth, renderings, artistic renderings of how the planet is pretty much covered with is an ice planet, and we don't think of ourselves as that. But the fact of the matter is, human existence, for the most part, well, not even for the most part, human existence, period. Excuse me. I think it's too early to belch out loud. Human existence exists during interglacial periods. And we're in an interglacial period right now, and we're about to head into another like ice age, basically. With this catastrophe that's we talked about in the last several episodes. And so, and even the idea that these trees like sequoias and these Bristol pines, what have you, live to be 3 to 5,000 years old, they still pale in comparison to this 12,000 year cycle. Even what some call like a 5 to 6,000 year cycle, half of that where there appear to be some serious earth changes that occur. So, whose world is it really? Whose world really? We talk about CO2 and save the planet. People get, they use all this terminology that people use. And they don't realize that the primary life form on the planet, flourishes under sun, heat, storm, rain, a lot of rain, storms, and plenty of CO2. And it's us little things like if you, again, look at the title card of this show, the size of the hiker, in comparison to the sequoias, and it's like we're just these little ants crawling around on this planet who, in general have, are full of ourselves. And we think we're self-important. And, and so when in many ways, when you look at this Davos set, these people that think they're the ruling elite of the planet, in many ways, they're just an aberration of all the rest of us who are just, thinking, hey, we're the masters of this planet and the masters of the universe even, right? Narcissism, and so, you say, well, so what? Well, yeah, it's just the idea of putting things into perspective, and dealing with and seeing things in a way that, like I was trying to say yesterday, if that the planet is heading into a catastrophe, an extinction event. I was using the word near extinction event for a while, but like I said, as foolish as people seem today, you got to really wonder if not, I mean, I'm sure there'll be people who survive because there's just so many people on the planet, and there are caves and so many different areas that just by chance. But, you think about the myths and the way things are passed down and, is our knowledge going to be preserved? Or is it just like a reset? And so people living, because if you look at the equatorial region, which may or may not be the area where people survive, but it's not exactly as if that's the place where we have our highest, institutes of learning and cultural centers, and storage, cloud storage farms, or whatever you want to call it. Most of the people are running from those areas to so-called northern civilizations, Europe, US, to escape that area for like some kind of dream, right? And here it is, the ultimate absurdity, right? Irony. I mean, is that's the area. The people who live there will be the people that survive. So, and they're that's the future. The founders, you know, the Adam and Eves of the next civilization. And so it begins over and over again. And as people discover pieces and pieces over centuries and eventually millennia, a civilization is built and they try to piece together things. And what do you end up with? Another catastrophe by the time you rise to a level to where you could comprehend that there is a catastrophe. One of the things about being like not in the rat race anymore is that for me, it almost feels like a Saturday today for some reason. It's weird. Like days don't mean anything. And that's a good thing. Because it's also like the news means nothing. It's like when you get rid of TV. So things that people are, the talk of the office water cooler or whatever, which is ridiculous, but you know what I'm saying. When you detach yourself from that, then you're just more in tune with life itself and living. And I think that's the reason. I think a lot of people are afraid of that. I think, like, I noticed a lot of people that, and I hear this from older people a lot. Like people that are very old, but I mean, still somewhat active, mobile, put it that way. That they're constantly wanting to do something, to go out to lunch, to go to here, to go there, do this, do that. They can't stand being in their home, apartment, or whatever space they're in. Now, I admit I like to be outside myself, and I spend as much time outside as I can. But I have no problem being alone. And it's the idea of being comfortable with yourself. And I think a lot of people today are just not comfortable being with themselves. And maybe they're not comfortable with who they are or who they think they are or whatever. That gets back to that whole consciousness, and the bioelectric brain, that duality thing, which I talk about in my book, Codex, over there, which nobody bought. Well, a couple people did, I think, somehow, but not very few. And if you're not comfortable with yourself, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be truly happy. And you're not going to get what life is all about, because life is this thing, this experiential adventure, right? By definition, you have five senses. So obviously you are structured, you exist to experience the world or the thing and everything around you or what have you with those senses. And that's life. People say, well, what's the meaning of life? Yeah, to experience it. And I think the people that are confused and puzzled and who are easily swayed and caught up in all of this cult of personality, propaganda, politics is pop culture, as I call it, and are scared, like the so-called 25% who haven't left their homes in a year. By the way, I'm seeing less and less people wearing masks now. And so it's an interesting phenomenon. Now, part of the reason, is we've had like a heat wave kind of, so to speak, over a couple of days, but now we're getting into some colder weather. And my chair fell. These kinds of bugs, so to speak, can't survive with UVB rays. It's just not conducive to them. In fact, most germs in general, it's why in hospitals, you'll see UVB ray lights along the hallways, especially leading to the operating rooms and stuff. And they use them in water filtration as well. I have a toothpaste or a toothbrush holder in my bathroom that actually has a UV light in it. So that after I brush my teeth, I close that thing and the light automatically comes on for I don't know how long. Never stood there and watched. And that kills any kind of germ that's on the toothbrush. But now, as I had showed with the weather, I know it's a slow start. I apologize. It'll either pick up or I don't know what'll happen. But it's got to pick up. Traffic going by.
We'll have to remodulate our signal to match the network's interlink frequency.
That might help a little bit. So this weekend is not really good for, putting this thing to rest. So there should be an uptick in, these things they post on the top of TV screens. And they'll have some kind of explanation. Pardon me for having soft drink on my mustache. They'll have some kind of explanation for it being that people aren't wearing the old thing and getting this and stuff. But the reality is it's just basically the temperature. It's going to dip down into, the 50s and 40s. And that's usually when these things end up flourishing. So if you hadn't gotten out, or if there's some sun out today, my advice to you is to wherever you are, whatever you're doing, take a break and try to get 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes minimum of sun with as much of your skin exposed so that you could pull in that, absorb that UVB rays, boost your immune system, and kill off anything on you, because that's what it does. And so, because we're heading into a weekend, I haven't really looked at it, but let's take a look at it. Let's go to the videotape. New window. Let's see. NOAA U.S. weather map. Yeah. Let's see if what the National Weather Service. Let's see if I could get today's. Yeah, it's funny when you watch these so-called weather stations on TV. I'm trying to get the whole weather map up just for a second here. See what's going on. Okay. National forecast, Thursday, May 27th, 2021. Available image format. Sorry. Oh, when you see these weather channels on TV, they all just go and steal all this information and all that satellite stuff. It's not like they're doing it. They just steal this from NOAA. They never really mention that. They try to pretend like as if they're some, they're doing this. So I'm looking at rain. The center part of the country, this is like, I might as well just give this you weekend weather. And I wish I could be showing you this. And click image above to enlarge. Okay. I actually can show you this. And hopefully this won't cause any weird things. I haven't had the monitor on in a while, but why not? Bear with me, folks. Gives me something to do. Get my mind off this nonsense. All right. Screen mirroring. There we go. And let's look for the camera. All right. Now, what do we see? Oh, kind of looks like something you'd see on TV. Yeah. So it looks like severe thunderstorms possible. That's that area. See, I don't know if you can. Yeah. There's the legend. And so you can see that in the usual areas, in the Kansas, east of Kansas, going to Oklahoma, into Texas, all the way up in the southern Iowa, you've got basically severe thunderstorms possible, heavy rain, flash flooding possible. Part of that overlaps the Mississippi. Mixed precipitation up high. Still going to get, we're still getting probably snow. Or snow or sleet, hail. Well, probably hail there. And rain and thunderstorms pretty much, like I say, in the middle part, towards the middle of the state, heading, or the country heading to the east. This particular one doesn't show temperatures, but let's try to go back tomorrow's forecast. Let's see if we can find temperatures. I don't want to do anything like that. Geographical force. All right. This is an experimental page. Okay, this is what we wanted, though. All right, now this is a daytime high. This is the temperatures. And I realize I'm shaking this thing, but this is giving you an idea of what's going on. Now, this will show you Friday. So as you can see, Thursday, the southern part of the country is pretty much going to be hot in the 80s and 90s. All right. And as we go into Friday, it starts cooling down in the northern areas. See what they start turning green. By Saturday, we're talking about 60s and 50s pretty much over the whole northern tier. Excuse me. And by Sunday, and then Monday gets a little bit better, and Tuesday and beyond, we're back to normal. Wednesday. But so that's your weekend weather forecast. Live and in color. And I seem to be still synced, so it's not doesn't seem to be interfering with anything. So what I'm saying is that down south, you guys are fine. Pretty much so, except for the usual places that this time of year get storms. You're in for stormy weather. Stormy weather. Now, but the high population centers, unfortunately, as we saw on that map, you know, your Chicago's, New York, DC, Philly, Boston, you know, all those big northern and northeastern cities where everybody seems to be, where the huddled masses are, you know, and people, and really huddled. And that's the problem, right? So that's the whole reason why we have these things. You know, of course, now they're finally coming out and admitting that they're doing an investigation into whether or not it is what I've said it was all along, a bioweapon. But I'm sure given 90 days, that's the time frame they've put to it, that's just going to give them enough time to cover their tracks and come up with a plausible deniability or some ridiculous explanation, you know, that they put through focus groups and, you know, all the human behavior analysis people to see if it's sellable to the functionally illiterate through the media reports and press releases that they put out. You know, everything you know is wrong, and what you don't know, you don't know. But that was something I observed before I went to bed last night when I was watching I was binge watching this stupid show I've been telling you about. This Criminal Minds thing. I don't know. I just watched it for the blonde. But I flipped back YouTube just before I turned off the TV, as they say. And I noticed that was floating around in title cards. This, we're going to look into this. Now, the funny thing about that, any kind of investigation with like the alphabet agencies, is that they've already known for over a year, if not a year and a half. You know, see, this is the thing. You don't know what you don't know. Please buy that shirt at TonyCaravanLive.com. Spread the word about this webcast, right? Look, these are people that are basically trying to rule the world. I mean, in effect, they are ruling the world. Right? Western civilization, the U.S., you know, has been the holding the barbarians back at the gate, you know, for, since the WW2, basically. Right. Before that, it was, the last time you would see that kind of thing was in Europe during the Crusades. All right. Now, there are some people that talk about there's, some very, very ancient cultures that history has either forgotten or have been intentionally removed from the the modern academic teachings and textbooks. And there's a guy he just put out another video who I talked about before. The name of his YouTube channel is Asha, ASHA Logos, LOGOS, Asha Logos. And watch that. And it'll probably be over most people's heads. I mean, it is. And I tell you, to be honest with you, part of the stuff he says is because people who aren't in tune with like these previous civilizations and, the way how warped history is, and how little we know. And that's why I say you don't know what you don't know. And basically everything you know is wrong. It's a generalization, but I mean, it says it. And there were all these cultures, like empires even, that just never made it into Western history or were downplayed as like some, as if it was some minor group of people or some subset of something. But in fact, they were, a primary influence on civilization, and were at one point were the dominant force on the planet. And I'm not talking about like Genghis Khan, like the type of people that the names that we know, the household names, so to speak. No, these are names of peoples, nationalities that the average person isn't even aware of, or says, oh yeah, So some of that stuff's worth looking into. Though I tried communicating with that guy one time, and I don't know, he either blew me off or doesn't read his comments. I did a show like what I called was a pain to the guy. Look that word up. If you're not bored yet,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
You just tuned in. It's the key punch card we were talking about earlier. Still there. It's funny that, this is about 50 years that we went from this to, this in less than 50 years. But back to the trees, the sequoias, and, these giant pines and the planet. When man is gone, they will quickly take over again. Under a cataclysm, I mean, most of what we have, like I said before, will be scoured over, so just destroyed. And over time, we'll have, if not melted, literally melted or scoured, pulverized during the cataclysm. It will have just disintegrated, over 10,000 years. That's just the way it is. It's an incomprehensible amount of time. Just like 5,000 years ago. But to a tree that could live that long, or close to it. So it's all, it's like there's something, it's a term they used to call not used to, but still do. It's a transcendence, I think. Yeah, you got that right. And it's the idea that when you're a child, a day seems to last endless. It's like just goes on and on and on. Because the amount of time, one day, in the amount of time that you've been alive on the planet, is a substantial amount of time, a measurable amount of time, right? When you're a child, day, week, even a month. Okay. But to someone who's older, who's lived, say, 60 years or something, one day, 365 a year over 60 some years is a minuscule amount of time. So that the day is no longer, the day moves, where does a day go? That type of thing. Though I find myself, getting up early the way I do, I find that my days tend to drag on and are long. So the longer I live, the longer the days go. So that whole concept doesn't really seem to work for me, but that's just my lifestyle, I think. Having, getting up early in the morning and doing something like this, preparing for this, just putting the technology together and various things. And then going through some morning things I do on a normal day, like feed the birds and water the garden and, all those sorts of things. Or if I go to the grocery store, my leg is still out. Man, I hope this thing just heals up somehow. I'll tell you, it's a real downer. But back to this idea of the trees. And, and I've talked about this before, about this fungi that, particularly in the northwestern region, that is where a lot of these sequoias and long-living pines exist. That there are people that have studied this network, this underground network of the fungi, basically, mushroom roots type of things. And that there's like an interconnection and a communications going on there. It's like a neural network of sorts among these species that are the primary species of the planet. So if something, when there's a perceived threat, food source, whatever, who knows? And what I was trying to say is this idea that people who mess around with these.
Did you accidentally inject yourself with some kind of psychotropic agent?
With like the DMTs or the psilocybins and stuff like that, particularly even psilocybin more so, the mushroom idea, is that, they're, maybe they're getting, it's like they're in touch with that neural network more, or just in general. And perhaps the DMT experience, again, is like some kind of geometric, is a foreign, I guess you would say alien, but on the same planet. An alien communication, just a different, in other words, we're seeing a species communicate among itself and you're getting a glimpse of that, that world, so to speak. I mean, these are things that, they're interesting to study. But to me, that's my theory on that, or thesis. It's this idea that I still strongly believe that, that we're just not, we are not the crowning achievement of this planet. We're going to be extinct, sometime in the next 25 years. And what comes out of that frozen world and ashes is going to be trees and other flora and fungi, that for the first several thousand years will basically just be the primary life form on the planet. And everything else that rises up, its goal is just to be fertilizer or provide CO2, for the primary life force of the planet during the next interglacial period. Kind of makes us, see yourself, it's a humbling experience to look at it that way. And that's not to say anything less of our consciousness, or, call it your soul or spirit part as opposed to your biological, bioelectric brain, as I call it. But still, it's still a humbling experience. And it just makes all these things that everyone's obsessed with, it just seems so petty. Really petty. I also was talking about the other day, I think it was someone else, or maybe I said it on one of these shows. It's this idea of these vegans and vegetarians. Now, I'm not particularly a big meat eater. Okay, it's just not my thing. But, and there is this thing that if you lack protein in your diet, you are more susceptible to the power of suggestion. Right. And cults and things like that. In fact, they deprive people of protein. That's part of their thing. A lot of people don't know that. You don't know what you don't know. Get the shirt. So you need protein in your diet. So, you can get protein from nuts and other places. But what I'm saying is, unless you were living on a diet strictly of plucked fruit off of trees or bushes, such as blackberries, blueberries, cherries, apples, oranges, right? The fruit, the seed pod, of this primary life force. Unless that were your only diet, which I don't think you can be truly healthy on, like over a long term. But I don't know that for sure. But that statement about the protein thing making someone susceptible to brainwashing, lack of protein, clearly you're not going to get that from just eating cherries and apples, or a banana. So, these people eat roots, root plants, and all sorts of things derived from living things. They're flora. You know, the world is flora and fauna and plants. So the hypocrisy of the vegan vegetarian lifestyle is that you're just making a decision that, you know, mammals, you know, or certain type, you're saying certain life forms are okay to kill and eat, but that others, you know, others aren't. And I think that's hypocrisy. And I also think that you have to look at the nature of life itself and say, you can't feel like guilt, you know, or bad about it. You know, I don't particularly like, you know, like I say, I feed birds and, you know, there's a rabbit that's starting to show up in my yard every now and then. And I put peanuts out for a chipmunk, you know. I have a cat, you know. I like animals. So, you know, I don't really see anything. I see animals as intelligent. Anyone, if you lived on a farm or if you visit a farm, you realize that, you know, a cow, it's the idea of even a deer. If you watch deer, you know, and how these animals live among themselves and stuff, that it becomes harder to justify, you know, the harvesting of animals. But at the same time, it's the concept of harvesting of, you know, of plants. You know, we choose what we decide, you know, it's okay to do this, you know, but it's not okay to do that. You know, and we rationalize and we have excuses we make. But who knows? Right? You know, maybe there is a neural network of fungi connecting, excuse me, these 3,000-year-old sequoias or pines, and that they have, you know, with through this whole neural network that spans, literally, it's been studied, spans like states, like northwestern states, I believe. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine a brain, a neural network that extends from like California, you know, through Washington and Oregon. Or throughout Canadian forests, or where have you. I mean, I don't know about you, but I say this all the time. I've traveled all over this country, you know, by car, by myself, and I've flown over it. I don't know how many times. Geez. So many times I can't remember. And all I see, you know, when you're up there 20,000, whatever, feet up or more in a plane, you don't see people, but you do see forests, and you do see farmland, and you do see, you know, plains, growing plains. And when you're driving in cars along highways, you see hills and mountains and growth. And if you have a house and a yard, you see growth everywhere. in between a crack in your sidewalk, there's going to be some kind of weed or something pushing its way through. People mowing their lawns and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I love growth. My backyard right now is just I'm allowing vines to cover the back of my house. They're actually, I believe, grapevines, which I'm still waiting to get grapes from them. But other wild things like these, I think they call them Rose of Sharon bushes or something. They grow pretty wild. They're like, I guess you would call it an invasive type of hedge almost. But they have this flower on them that comes out. And those flowers all turn into seed pods. And so they have a lot of flowers, so a lot of seed pods. And so they tend to be invasive, which is fine with me. I'm letting them grow next to one of my neighbors who I don't particularly care for. I want privacy from. So, oh, by the way, let's see if my let's just look at this a second. I want to go here. Oh, this is it. That is my beer, cigars, and that's my bar top in my kitchen. You can see on the screen over here. And you could see in the foreground, this is the cane. So I had to walk up the hill to the convenience store to buy 3 packs of these little cigars. And I was lucky enough to get the green ones that were fresh. And then I had to go to this bar where the 80-year-old guy was sitting there by himself. And then I had to carry all this stuff back in one arm while I have this all my weight on this cane. It's pretty crazy. This is a video. I'm going to put it see if I can put this sideways. Doesn't seem to change. There's a video a friend of mine shot. I don't know if this is going to affect my mouth here. This is her 2 cats looking at birds out the window. Hopefully you can see it. Getting freaked out over a bird. Turn that off. That may well have interfered with my what else do we have here? Bird seed. And that's the behind the scenes. And this is my security camera. Let's see what's going on out front. That's my front porch. So I'm going to turn this off just in case it's causing complications. Oops, I can't do that though. It's not that simple. You have to go to this, stop mirroring. Right. Then turn it off. Then turn this off. And then turn that off. But, showing those cats and talking about animals and stuff, it's like, some animals we have, people who have dogs, cats, whatever, and we say they're domesticated animals in a sense, but it's no different than people that ride horses, or if you've been around calves or goats or, sheep. It's like these things they kind of respond the same way as what we call domesticated animals, pets, right? And so what I'm trying to get at is this whole big circular discussion about from the Sequoias, to just the flora and this neural network and the communications of flora and fauna. Excuse me. I mean, that's just a part of.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Anyone who's watched this show realize that I clear my throat at least a dozen or more times. So, it's just, I just like, these are things to think about. And it puts your life in perspective. And it also brings out hypocrisy of people, who, get caught up in all kinds of things. Because no matter what it is that you become obsessed with, because there's nothing worse than somebody who's just been converted to veganism or something, right? The zealot that they become. But like I say, you're being a hypocrite, And if you're not getting enough protein in your diet, that's just going to exacerbate the indoctrination process, because it's been proven that a lack of protein makes you more susceptible to brainwashing and propaganda. And it's a technique that those who do propagandize or that cult leaders use in order to get people into their cults. So it also makes you think about, the processed foods. And that's why I say everything is wrong. And what you don't know, you don't know. And when you have a country and countries that I say are now corporatocracies, for-profit corporatocracies, and politicians are just marionettes of the corporatocracies. And you can't disagree with that. You could give me all the bull you want, but that big tech is in charge. Big pharma is in charge. The military industrial complex is in charge. The big financial companies and the central bank, the Fed, is in charge. And all in concert, that's the corporatocracy. And they're the ones who finance campaigns, through what we used to call K Street. Their lobbyists basically write the bills that Congress passes, and they apply pressure on all the politicians. So they literally pull their strings. Politicians are marionettes. And the media companies are part of the corporatocracy. So they basically do the bidding of the corporatocracy. It's the propaganda wing, the PR wing. And when you take all these corporatocracies in the former Western civilization, put them all together, above them is an international crime syndicate that meets every year at Davos. And that's the World Economic Forum, right? Who decided last year they wanted to do this great reset. And it's being done. It's in progress. We live in the former United States, a place that has irreconcilable differences, right? You're not going to save America because it's impossible. They're already ignoring the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment and a couple others. Constitution's being trampled on. The courts aren't on your side. In some local jurisdiction, somebody is, goes to divorce court, or there's a, defense lawyer or a prosecutor doing some kind of thing in some small criminal case or something. Yeah. But, even there's 19,000 homicides a year in the U.S. alone. I say that all the time. That's like an unbelievable statistic. But on TV, you see a couple of faces, the same people and stories that they get obsessed with and just drag on for a year. We just had an anniversary. They called it an anniversary of one person from a year ago. And again, it's not a matter of not saying that, there was an injustice or a crime committed. That's not my point here. My point is when there's 19,000 a year, the idea that you could obsess over an entire year over one is obviously a clear example. I mean, right in your face that they're just using it and capitalizing on that for, to create some kind of divisiveness or for an agenda that they have. Because what about the other 19,000 people that homicides in the U.S. that were committed by and had victims who were every race, creed, color, and walk of life? Right? 19,000. No one talks about that. That number's not on the screen, right? Anyway, I digress, as they say. So I was just thinking about this yesterday, because I'm not going to really, I don't want to harp on catastrophe theory. I think the show I did 2 days ago and my follow-up yesterday, if you're not aware of this, watch my show from two days ago. And then yesterday's show after that, which is a follow-up and fills in some blanks, I think, perhaps. But I think I've said all I can say on that. It's just like in other shows where I've dealt more in depth into this concept of the corporatocracy and the international crime syndicate. It's like I keep bringing it up because that is important, that people get that through their heads. But of course, one could also argue there's nothing more important than knowing that at any given time, the sun could nova, and most likely will, and it will be an extinction event. And that this has been documented by astrophysicists, archaeologists, geologists, and the federal government is well aware of it, has documents, FOIA documents have proven that. So life is very fragile, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Our existence, we're just teetering on the brink of extinction, in a sense. And that there are other life forms on this planet that are primary life forms, such as 3,000-year-old trees. Think about that. A tree that's been around for 3,000 years, that's connected through a neural network of sorts. Now, it's not to say that this thing is, highly advanced. We don't know. I mean, but then again, a neural network that spans states, and that is that is connected to, countless life forms that have lived over 3,000 years, that, to deny, the possibility of intelligence there is, just is being very self-centered and narcissistic, I think. And these are things to think about. Like I said, It's their world, technically. Whether or not they're intelligent through some sort of neural network or not, they're the primary life form on this planet. They live longer than us. They grow faster than us. And they're everywhere you can imagine. And all this talk of CO2 and stuff like that, that's what they flourish on. They need it to survive and thrive. And in the end, we're nothing more than fertilizer to them. It's just an interesting way of looking at life, grounding yourself, being humble. Yesterday I was out in my backyard. I took my shoes and socks off. People talk about this grounding thing. I don't know much about it. But I took my shoes and socks off and I got on my lawn because I have an apple tree that I mentioned before that's about 7 feet tall now. And it was grown from a gala apple that I ate and saved the seed and put the seed in, basically just planted the seed in a little seed, those packs you can buy, because I do my own seed starts in the house every year. That's how I grow my garden. And I just, for the hell of it, planted a couple of apple seeds. And they popped up. It's been in the ground now for about 4 or 5 years. And now it's about 7 feet tall. But it was leaning for some reason. So I put a stake over in this side and like a bungee cord kind of thing, because I didn't want to put like a rope right into something to dig into the bark. I wanted something that was flexible. And I kind of straightened it out barefoot, and then put in some fresh soil and pounded it down to kind of also reinforce the fact to keep it more upright. Just taking care of this tree. I really want apples. I think it'd be great to have apples in my yard. I mean, I grow everything else. But I was caring for the tree, and I was grounding myself barefoot on the grass. While it was a sunny day, then later, and then I went back to my lounge chair and soaked up some sun. Like I said, you can't tell from this lighting, but actually I have pretty much of a tan right now, and just to soak up that vitamin D. It's good for your immune system, makes you feel better. Part of the whole thing, kills, like I say, kills everything. UVB rays kill everything, like almost instantly, really. It's like when they put alcohol swab on your arm before you get a shot. Well, UVB's like that, except without, except it's just natural. So, I try to get in touch with, with the other life forms on the planet. I mean, you live among them. That's it. I don't, there's nothing, it's not really anything profound being said here, just other than the idea of the hypocrisy of people and how certain people just think just too much of themselves. And that the materialistic obsession and the technological obsessions, I was really got into that discussion a couple days ago. The idea that you could have a highly advanced culture that might not have gone particularly the machine route, the forging of metals, and silicon chip route. They could have used their brains, for memory, the bioelectric brain like savants and people with photographic memories do. And the idea of storytelling and living life and really using the senses to their full potential, that you could have a higher civilization, even higher than ours, without these things. Now, that's not to say, see, some people, when you say that, they think, oh, you're like some kind of Luddite type of person. Well, no, in our civilization, to abandon, technology, is just foolhardy, because our civilization is a technological society. It's like I always criticize these people who go out in the homesteaders who go out to the, and use these composting toilets and, outhouses in the year 2021. I'm like, dig yourself at least a, what do they call it? What's it called? I can't even think of it. A septic tank. Yeah. So you can have a flushing toilet. What are you trying to prove? It's like you see the same kind of people are, some of these are vegans, but other ones aren't. Some of them are hunters and stuff, but no, I embrace technology. It's great. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't have been civilizations 36,000 years ago, 24,000 years ago that didn't rely on machinery. Because in the grand scheme of things, there are other alternatives. I mean, even with, Tesla was into that, concept of tapping into electricity from like just the earth. And it gets into this grounding idea, literally. But, that's free energy. And, in our society and in the corporatocracy world, that's why we never went down that route. That's also why our lifespans have shortened. A human being, here we got trees that live to be 3,000 to 5,000 years old. And we got humans that now, I mean, the internet's useless. If you look the internet up, it'll tell you 78, but the year, it's from a couple of years ago. If you follow like those who study the most current statistics, we've actually lost a year. I think it's closer to 77 now. And it's a funny thing, just a quick aside on that, is what they're doing with Social Security and younger people coming up. The way they're getting rid of Social Security is that they keep pushing the age into this retirement age into the 70s for people. So that eventually, I believe the average life expectancy is going to be, in about the next 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years, will probably be only around 72, or 75 tops. And that'll probably be the retirement age. So in effect, they don't have to abolish Social Security. All they have to do is basically make Social Security become the you can't retire until the average life expectancy. But the human body in its current form, for those who study this kind of thing, can live to be about 120. I mean, I personally, depending on, how you look at old texts and stuff. But remember, these ancient texts, are from the before people, what I call the before people. Before perhaps the last extinction event. The Atlantean thing. It's like Plato, the end of the Plato story is missing, and people just accept that. But I believe people did live quite longer. The human body does have, there's these things called telomeres and stuff. Excuse me for doing this kind of stuff, but it's my show. You're listening to whatever. What does she say?
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine.
Okay.
But there are people who are highly into this kind of thing and how the cells renew themselves, and that you can extend life. There's possibility of life extension, through biology, not technology. That's why I'm kind of against this whole, not kind of, absolutely, this idea of transhumanism. To me, is just foolhardiness. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. But we should be at least living to be 120 years old. So think about this. The life expectancy of a human being now is literally 40 years. We've lost 40 years off of what our biological life expectancy is. 40 years. And that's an average, I mean, a lot of people are just keeling over in their 50s due to processed foods and stuff. But our life expectancy is diminished by 40 years. That we should be living to be 120. And like I say, it could be far, far longer. But biologically, if you talk to people in these fields, they'll tell you that. They'll say, yeah, the human body right now, as it is, could live to be 120. There are certain things that the way we're structured, genetically, and the way our cells just stop reproducing, repairing themselves and things like that, beyond 120 at this particular juncture is very unlikely. And there could be a myriad of causes from that. Anything from, our exposure to cosmic radiation, to mutations that occurred during the last extinction event, to our diet, and everything. Who knows? But the idea that a current life expectancy, they're saying 77, 78, and that humans can live to be over, around 120. I mean, that's 40 plus years. We're living less than, 40 years less than we should be. Now, we see a lot of centenarians out there, people living now, and in these care facilities, a lot of people in their 90s, and some of them are active. I'm talking about nursing homes, talking about what they call long-term care facilities now. A long-term care facility is more of an apartment type of environment, that's got assisted, what they call sometimes assisted living or things like that. It's different than a nursing home, which is a glorified hospital, right? That's what a nursing home is, with actually probably less treatment. People are warehoused in those things. Though also in assisting living places, many people are just warehoused as well. Which is another sad commentary on 21st century life. The idea that we don't really see age as wisdom, and respect the elderly in that way. The knowledge that they can share with us. Because each generation technically should be able to give the next the coming generation coming up a boost. And that's kind of how it has worked over the years, and how we got from, a Roman chariot, to a Model T Ford, and then ultimately Apollo spacecraft and the internet. one generation, giving a boost and sharing knowledge with the next and the next and the next. But, we see a lot of stagnation right now. I see that. That's what I see when I look around. I see a lack of interest. There's 75 million people. I've said this before. 17 and under right now in the U.S. approximately. And, excuse me. Belch. I admit it. I can't help it. And those individuals have no interest whatsoever. I'm generalizing. Okay. Some do, but generally no interest in their grandparents' advice or telling them stories or things like that. They're completely out of touch, or their great grandparents. They don't know, schools are teaching revisionist history or are focused on social issues, what they call social issues, social justice issues. Think about that. And the generation, what I call generation now, the people who are kind of there now. That's why when you call customer service, you either get an AI or some moron that doesn't listen to you. My electric company, I had an arrangement with them, a payment plan, because I try to keep myself on a budget, right? And so obviously your electric bill, at certain times of the year is going to be higher, right? If you're using air conditioning and things like that. And other times of the year, it's going to be nominal. And, so they have these things where you can just average this out and pay a certain amount, right? 3 different times I've negotiated with them to have this, monthly fee type of thing. And for 1 month, I pay my bills online mainly. And for 1 month after that conversation, it usually shows up, amount due, and it's that amount. Okay, good. That's it. I pay the bill. Bam. The next month, throwing the whole bill at me. Happened 3 times. Just happened again. Sent them an email. This time they didn't even reply. Because between the algorithms, AI, and this generation now, they're clueless, man. It's like I tell about this YouTube interface. The things that can be done, they're just using technology that people like me and many others developed, 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. And they've done nothing with it. Right? Oh, except tried to make it, add dark mode. And like I said, in the 90s, we had a plugin that was a way better dark mode than this. You used to be able to change the fonts in your browsers and your screen and have all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Way better than the dark mode today. But people think that's a big deal. Dark mode. So, that's a sign of civilization collapsing as well. Is that when you have, no respect for those who have knowledge. And you're not, one generation is not taking the ball and running with it and taking it a step further. It's kind of why the universe, the universe. Well, yeah. No, it's kind of why the space program kind of fizzled out. If you think about it. Why we have a space station that's a couple of tin cans put together with some solar panels instead of something out of 2001. right? Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah. It's why your internet sometimes is spotty, or why you get some kind of spinning delays on Apple computers, at least. Though people with PCs are telling me all the time they've got all kinds of problems with stuff. Changes to programs. I just had somebody who I did a website for, a friend, about 5 years ago. And she sent me an email and said, "Hey, I got some new things I wanted to add to that website." Was a stationary website. It was like kind of her online portfolio, so to speak, And she said, "Hey, could you, add some things and, make a few changes and do some stuff?" And I had to send her an email back and say, "No, I can't, because the program I used to design that website was called Muse. It was an Adobe program, right? And Adobe discontinued that program. And I also ended up quitting my cloud service because they were extorting money from me. They were charging me like $54 a month to maintain the other Adobe software, which basically rendered everything I've made over the past 10 or 20 years. Well, really about 10 years. Files I can't even open now because that's the thing about the cloud service. They don't really tell you that up front. That once you stop paying Adobe, you lose access. Your files won't open. If you have a Photoshop, what they call a Ph.D. file, something with multiple layers, you might be able to open that in preview, but you won't be able to make a change to the file. Right. And in this case of this woman who wanted me to fix her website, they just discontinued this program Muse. It was a good program. So I had to apologize and say, "No, I'm sorry. I can't. There's no way I can fix your website." I mean, the only way I would be able to do is I literally would have to rebuild it from scratch using, like, I do have an old what's called Clara's homepage, like a 20-year-old graphics program, which is a good one. It's on my older computer. Or I would have to rebuild it using one of these, like Google Sites or WordPress or some kind of crazy templated thing, which pigeonholes you and doesn't give you the creativity you'd like, because you have to conform to their templates that they went out and consulted graphic designers and webmasters years ago to create these things. But now the people in charge don't know anything about HTML5 or JavaScript or server-side includes or anything like that. Again, generally speaking, there are still programmers out there, obviously, hackers and whatnot. But yeah, this is a thing. So humans, maybe Henry Kissinger's right. Henry Kissinger, you are all useless eaters. But yeah, we're just fertilizer for the trees, man. I mean, at least that's what we're becoming. And then what's really worse is that you've got these Green New Deal people that want to deprive the trees, the primary life force of the planet, with CO2. They want to reduce the CO2 level. They want to kill the trees. And it's funny. It's not funny, but I mean funny, not ha ha. That a lot of these people are the vegans and vegetarians that are, the same New Deal, Green New Deal, and all this kind of climate crisis type people. They're all like that same ilk, right? People with protest signs in their hands, right? The unhappy generation, right? Have no happiness because they don't understand life's about the pursuit of happiness and just having fun. And they're out there, and basically their goal is to kill the trees and reduce the crop yields without CO2. And they openly admitted, I mentioned this yesterday, they're starting to openly admit that the cities are, because they're admitting that the cities are going to be the hardest hit with climate change, global warming in the inner cities because cities are hotter. And I've been saying this for years. It's like, yeah, of course the cities are hotter. That's nothing to do with climate change. That has to do with the high concentration of people in cities and HVAC systems and, black roadways, right? Asphalt roadways, parking lots, and just a high concentration of people, buildings, and vehicles, right? Generating heat and raising the temperature in that area by a degree or 2 Celsius. It's the same with airports, as I say all the time. So these people don't know what they're talking about, right? So in my mind, they're fertilizer. Humans are becoming fertilizer and will be fertilizer after this extinction event. And it'll be, the humans, the 8 billion humans taken out by this solar event, all right, that is being completely hidden by the corporatocracy and the organized crime syndicate that's trying to rule the world, who thinks they have bunkers and stuff to survive, but they don't. And what are they going to survive? What kind of world, right? They're building discotheques in there, right? With the Euro beat. Watch these movies, they always have this same kind of beat whenever it's like they go to Europe, right? Some kind of weird club beat. Are they going to put that kind of stuff in their shelters where they're going to be stuck for 100 years buried under a mile or 2 of ice? Idiots. Yeah, it's pretty, I don't know. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. But yeah, it's, we never really needed to go this route. This was probably the beginning of the end for us. And, if 50, 60, 70 years ago, we would have been exploring, we would have, put pressure on the Vatican to release the Vatican archives. If we wouldn't have allowed the pilfering, of these colonialists who just took all of this plunder from ancient sites like in Egypt and other places around the world, that's now in museums, back rooms, and in private collections, that probably have the secrets of previous civilizations, the true history of the planet, maybe even what they were working on to try to build, like I mentioned in my previous videos, which I recommend you watch, the one from two videos ago and then yesterday's, about them possibly trying to build a deflector, but they ran out of time perhaps, and instead spent the time they had left nobly trying to preserve their knowledge for us, their notes, and create these structures that would survive the cataclysm to give us a warning, and then their notes and stuff stored in these granite boxes give us a head start to take their work to the next level and perhaps, be able to deflect this thing. Because all a magnetic field really is, it's a force field. It's a force. And, if you take in consideration, when you look at these obelisks around the world and all these structures the ancient people built, I think that's what they were trying to do. I think that their idea was that they were trying to build a force field so that when the sun novaed, we would be able to basically shield ourselves from it. But currently, right now, our magnetic field is weakening. So that's why I don't know if this happened before, because we don't know what happened 12,000 years ago exactly from a magnetic field standpoint. Right? We have geological records, the archaeologists can tell you this, astrophysicists could, describe, events, cosmic events. But we don't know if the magnetic field was as weak as it was now. We could be in for, this could be curtains. Well, either way, it's curtains for most of us. 99.9% of the people are going to be, obliterated. Either, literally disintegrated or froze to death. And those who survive would probably starve, freeze or starve within 30 days or less. If you weren't, just pulled apart by winds and magma, and, earthquakes that will last for weeks at a time. Excuse me. Well, anyway, I know this show had a kind of a slow start. And as you can see, the room lit up, and there's my Mac, original Mac. So it's funny, between that Mac, this, and that Mac was only 10 years. When these things became obsolete, and then that desktop publishing and that kind of thing started to come in. That was like about 10 years, less than 10 years, actually, period of time before these things became obsolete. Not even, yeah. I'm sorry. Really, yeah, 5 or 6 years between this and that. And, from that to here, well. So, just some thought-provoking ideas and some things to consider. But the next time you see a tree, just think about it. And even in areas where you may live, if you're not around these sequoias or these pines that, live thousands of years, there's still probably trees that are, well over 100 some years old. Just in, some people's backyards or in a hill, that you can see out your window or when you drive to work. These life forms that live on CO2. And think about that. And then they're interconnected by a neural network of like fungi, basically. The primary life form on the planet. And they will be, even after this extinction event, they will dominate the planet. But you go down to South America and Central America, there are structures, from Mayan, Incan, all these ancient peoples that, conquistadors came in. But there's places down there that are so overgrown, just, over centuries, that they haven't even, very few people have even made it in, or there's places they say they're not even sure, but they think there's some things in there. We haven't even discovered the overgrowth. And that's just over hundreds of years. So, yeah, how does it feel to be fertilizer? Right? And for those of you who think you're like some Green New Deal is going to save the planet, you're just harming the primary life force on the planet. This planet needs CO2. And you need to look to the sun, because the sun is the primary contributor to the climate. And the sun's about to nova again, like it does every 12,000 years. Maybe you ought to use the time you have left to be like, nice to each other. And stop getting crazy about these social justice issues and trying to pit people against each other, by dividing everyone and capitalizing on one particular event that fits a narrative that you have, that you think you could run with and make people even more divided. Right? Because like in that recent anniversary thing, where you're stretched out one person, one tragic thing, say, one person out of 19,000 homicides. What's up with that? As if that wasn't like a textbook, PR propaganda messing with people's minds, to get a political agenda out there. The corporatocracy, this is the former United States. Former. There's no saving America. This is a corporatocracy. Other countries are corporatocracies. Now, all of those corporatocracies answer to an international crime syndicate that meets in Davos. They met this year, the World Economic Forum, and they implemented the Great Reset. That's the reality of 21st century life in the year 2021. You don't know what you don't know. Go to TonyCaravanLive.com. Click on the shirt, buy it, wear it, share it. All right? And that's all I have to say on that.
Good morning.
Wow, wake up. Talk to you soon. Cheers. Bye.